Hari. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
I welcome Dr. Ashutosh Dayal Mathur on behalf of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. आप सबका भी स्वागत है इस नए सत्र में। कुछ पुराने चेहरे हैं, कुछ नए हैं, और हम आशा करते हैं कि धर्मशास्त्र का ये परिचयात्मक अध्याय हमारे लिए लाभप्रद हो।
Well, I've given you four pages. The first page we may refer to later, but the lecture essentially starts from page 2 that has discussion points. I've been asked to speak on Dharma Shastra, but focusing essentially on the Manusmriti. Now, why have we picked up the Manusmriti? That Dr. Shashi Prabha would know better, but I can give you my own explanation and interpretation. When we are looking at the Manusmriti, I said we should look at it from 2 points of view. One, take it as a very limited reading. If we just look at this particular text that we have, it's something that the text that is called Manusmriti, it consists of, it's the largest text, has more than 2,680 verses, deals with a lot of things, but the limited reading of the text that I am saying is that we read the text as such, in isolation, just as one text. But my submission is that that is not how a Dharma Shastra text ought to be read. You see, we need to place it in a certain context. Dharma Shastra is a very, very wide set of texts, literature, has a huge expanse. If you want, we may start right from the Vedas. So starting from the Vedas, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranya, Upanishads, they all will form a part of some part of Dharma Shastra literature. But then the more important sections will start with what we call the Sutra literature. There are some sutras particularly dealing with Dharma. I have to explain this concept, I have to explain this notion of Dharma later, but I'm just giving you a kind of a bird's eye view of the kind of literature that we need to be aware of. Sutra literature, some of the sutras, Dharma sutras that we know of, Apastambhiya Dharma Sutra, Gautam Dharma Sutra, they are the earliest texts which are more organized, more scientifically arranged, and deal with just the topic of Dharma. But then comes the stage of the Smritis. Smritis are Dharma Shastra texts. These are called metrical texts. They are in verses. So Manusmriti has certain number of verses. Some of the Smritis, some of the better known Smritis are like Manusmriti, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Narad Smriti, Brihaspati Smriti. But there are a whole lot of about 200 odd texts which have the name Smriti, which have the tag of Smriti. But then Manusmriti happens to be the first among all the Smritis. If you ask me the date, time, I'll say, sorry, I can't say anything on this. We should, as a Sanskritist, I'll rather leave it to historians. And I'm not a historian. So I won't dare to comment on the dating of the Manusmriti. But the traditional dating is, okay, now that's very funny. From 200 BC to 400 BC, to 200 AD. you still assign a period of 400 years for compilation of this text. Whether this is one single text or it has been a continuous process and it has evolved over a period of years, 400 years probably, that again itself is a questionable idea, but that is what I know. 400 years is the period when Manusmriti is supposed to have evolved. But then, after the Manusmriti, the next important Smriti is the Yajnavalkya Smriti. Date, no idea. Place, no idea. Author, no idea. As with Manusmriti. Is that a problem? I don't think so. It's a problem. It's a problem for historians, but not for Sanskritists. Not even for Dharmashastris. And when we are looking at this text, as I said, if you take it as a text in isolation, then you look at it differently. But I want you to take it as a part of a long chain of texts in the whole tradition of Dharmashastra. So starting from the Rig Veda, we can come down almost to late 19th century, when Dharmashastra texts were being written and continuously written in all parts of the country. So we have Ved, we don't know when they were written again. So if we go by the traditional Max Muller's view, what is taught in school books, 1200 BC, I say I'm happy. That still gives me 4,000 years. So I'm happy that I'm not too worried whether my history goes back to 6,000 or 10,000. If it goes back, I'll be happier, but 4,000 is good enough for me. So you're looking at a textual tradition which spreads across 4,000 years. And in those 4,000 years, how things have evolved, how things have changed, is what we need to see. Therefore, if you look at the text, just the Manusmriti by itself, you may not find it very interesting. You may find it objectionable. You may find certain things very, very things which will make you uneasy. No doubt about it. But then, as I said, Dharmashastra does not look at Manusmriti as one isolated single text. We have what is called the theory of unity of all texts. This is a very interesting idea. The theory of unity of all texts. In Sanskrit, we call it Ekvakyata ka Siddhant. The theory of Ekvakyata, that all the texts form one single largest statement. And therefore, if one person is speaking, if there is one person speaking and he says things which appear to be contradictory, then you have to kind of somehow resolve that contradiction. So that is the theory, that is the essence on which, that is the basic principle on which Dharmashastra proceeds. There could be many differences in the Smritis, which there definitely are. So what does a Dharmashastri do? And that is where from Manusmriti we launch ourselves into what I am calling Dharmashastra. Dharmashastra will look at all these texts as one continuous whole. Dharmashastra will try to organize it in a scientific manner. Dharmashastra will try to resolve the contradictions involved. Dharmashastra will try to create a more homogeneous, a more useful, utilitarian kind of an image, a set of rules which can be applied in our lives. So that is what Dharmashastra does, and therefore when we look at Manusmriti, I will request that we should not look at it as a text in isolation, but as a part of a huge chain. And even there, though I said Manusmriti happens to be the first Smriti, but that is not the first text of the Dharmashastra class. It is somewhere in the middle. So there is a history behind the Manusmriti, and there is a long tradition after the Manusmriti, and the Manusmriti therefore has to be placed in that long tradition of Dharmashastra. if we just look at the Manusmriti, the first page that I have given to you, that will give us an idea of the subject matter, not only of this particular text, but of all Dharma Shastra. We can just quickly run through it, but there is a little summary at the end. There are 12 chapters. The first chapter deals with the origin of the text, origin of the world, time scale, subject matter, Varana Dharma, and then a detailed list of what is to follow in the Manusmriti. The entire Anukramani, the entire list of subject matter of the Manusmriti. The second chapter essentially deals with Brahmacharya Ashram, life at Gurukul. The third, fourth, fifth, 3 chapters deal with the duties of a Grihastha. Third, fourth, and fifth deal with the duties of a Grihastha. Then again, 7th, 8th, 9th, they also deal with the duties of a Grihastha, but this time it's a Raja. This time it's the king as the Grihastha. 10th chapter again has the duties of Varana Sankara and their duties. 9th chapter deals with the duties of a Vaishya Grihastha, Shudra Grihastha, apart from other things. Chapter 11 deals with Dan and Prayashchitta, which also fall under the duties of a Grihastha. So out of these 12 chapters, you will find that there is a huge emphasis on the duties of a Grihastha. And that is a very significant aspect of not only just the Manusmriti, but of Dharma Shastra by itself. That shows us the focus of the Dharma Shastri and of the Dharma Shastra. Now, what does Dharma Shastra do?
May I ask one question?
Okay.
Sir, when you were talking about Smriti, you were talking about Narad Smriti, Brahaspati Smriti, Yagvalakya Smriti, and then Manusmriti. So, I have a question. When you are talking about Narad and Brahaspati, they are called deities.
No. We have texts assigned. Okay, I'll just answer that briefly. See, we have so many texts
I
which.
want to know about, is it written by a human beings or?
Well, for me, they are all written by human beings. I can't be talking about divine creations here, but then I will have no authority to talk about it or even analyze them or criticize them. So they are all human creations. And what you have asked is a very interesting question. See, that will help me. In fact, I'll come to that question a little later, but that's a very relevant question. Let me first start with what does Dharma Shastra try to do? Just having a cursory look at these topics shows us that the Grihastha dominates here. And I said that's a very significant idea. Why is it a significant idea? Because this shows that Dharma Shastra is trying to convey a message. And that is the message of what we call Pravrittivada, the theory of engagement. Unfortunately or fortunately, I mean, you might object that why am I using the word unfortunately, but that's my expression. There have been two ideas about how one should spend one's life. How one should spend one's life. One is the path of renunciation, Nivrittivada. Nivrittivada, or the path of renunciation. Particularly, the Buddhist school of philosophy thought that the whole world was a cause of misery. Life itself is a cause of misery. So what does one do? The best is to renounce the world itself. We also have certain thinkers within the so-called tradition, within the Sanatan tradition, within the Orthodox tradition, particularly Shankaracharya, for example. At some point of time, he will say, oh, ultimately the whole world is false. Ultimately, the world is false, and therefore, the best path is the path of pravrajya. The best path is the path of renunciation. And but if you look at this, if you just try to appreciate the fact, is it possible for all people in this world to become sannyasis? It is not possible. It is not even desirable, because you are all seniors, but when I talk about the same thing in my class, where undergraduate students say, I say, oh, what a wonderful idea. Suddenly your parents will stop paying your fees. And suddenly the doctor operating, doing a surgery will say, I am going away. Yadahareva virajet tadahareva pravarjet. The moment you feel that you need to renounce the world, you should quit. Now, that is just not possible. So, that is where we have a very nice verse from the Manusmriti. The discussion point number 1, that's where I am now. Conflict between akamata and kamatmata. Page 2. Page 2, wider reading. Point number 1. Conflict between akamata and kamatmata. There was also this third view, which is represented by what we call the Charvak philosophy in Indian thought, who says one should just enjoy one's life. Enjoy your life. Even if you have to take a loan from somebody, don't have to pay. You can easily go and stay in US or America or London actually. So don't repay your loans. So, but just enjoy, have a good life. Now, even that is not possible or desirable. So, Manusmriti has this very important verse. Kamatmata na prashasta na chaive astya kamata. Kamatmata na prashasta na cha eva iha asti akamata. I have translated this as 2.2 here. Being a slave to desire is not good. Being a slave, it's on page 2 itself. 2.2. Being a slave to desire is not good. Yet absolute freedom from desire is not to be found in this world. So there is this, you need to have a balance between kamatmata. Kamatmata in Sanskrit, in English would mean being in a state where one totally identifies oneself with worldly desires and is totally given to materialistic pursuits without bothering about any values, morality, law, or any other consideration and concern for others. That is kamatmata. That is what the Charvak probably represents. When he says yavat jivet sukham jivet ridam krutva ghritam pibet. At least it didn't say likaram pibet. He also said ghritam pibet. Madhyam pibet na uttam. Ghritam pibet. So being a slave to desire is not good. So the Charvaka view is not acceptable. Absolute freedom from desire, not possible for human beings. So but there has to be a balance between having desires but also not having desires. That is the path which Bhagavad Gita speaks of. What is the concept of sannyasa in Bhagavad Gita? When Arjun wanted to run away from the battlefield, he wanted to give up. He wanted to give up his duties as a Kshatriya. And what does Krishna do? Pulls him back. If you look at Arjun's arguments there against war, they're really good arguments. War causes destruction, war causes death, war causes total social instability, etc. These are not bad, these are very strong arguments. And the response by Krishna is very, very interesting. When Arjun has completed his statements, Krishna comes out with one verse, Klaibyam Masma Gamah Partha. Not willing to grant any concession to the very good arguments given by Arjuna. He says, all that you are saying shows only your weakness. You are giving all these arguments to hide your weakness, to hide your fear, to hide your confusion, to hide your desire to run away from facing the truth. So, and then you all must have gone through the Gita, or at least know about it. The several verses in the Gita which say that doing your action is far superior to sannyas. And then there are all kinds of arguments built around it. And what is the balance which Gita has given us? Gita defines what true renunciation consists of. True renunciation is doing your duty without any aversion, attachment, rag and dvesha. That is the thesis which Manusmriti is also built upon. That is the thesis on which the entire Dharma Shastra is built upon. So therefore, these Smritis, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Puranas, what we might call the mainstream Hinduism now, mainstream Hinduism is based on this very theory of striking the right balance between renunciation and action, engagement and renunciation, karma and sannyas. So sannyas does not mean giving up action. Sannyas would mean changing your attitude towards life, changing your attitude towards action, changing your attitude towards worldly pleasures. That's all. So another very interesting verse that I can think of the Bhagavad Gita is that, but that is with reference to bhakti, but that gives you the essence of involvement with renunciation. Whatever action you are doing, even when you are breathing, when you are giving something in charity, you are doing a yajna or whatever, do it with the thought that I am doing it for God, not for myself. So what does that mean? Gita tells us to give up attachment to the fruit, to the result of action, not to the action. So that is the theory on which the entire Dharma Shastra is based. Therefore, the next line in Manusmriti 2.2 is, I'll read that again. Being a slave to desire is not good, yet absolute freedom from desire is not to be found in this world. Therefore, what is desirable is the knowledge of the Veda and the actions prescribed by the Veda. So, this is Kamyo hi Vedadhigamaha Karma Yogascha Vaidikaha. So, Manusmriti is talking of what we can call Vedic Karma Yoga as an answer to Nivrittivad. Now, what does Vedic Karma Yoga mean? Yoga I would simply translate as engagement. Karmani Yoga, engagement in action. But what action? Vedic action. Engagement with Vedic action is Vedic Karma Yoga. So all that Manusmriti does is, all that the entire Dharma Shastra literature does is to define, prescribe what Vedic actions are. Therefore, if we try to now look at the meaning of the word dharma, the simplest meaning that I would suggest is dharma here would mean duty. My duties as a social being. Because we started with that idea of between renunciation and action, they believe in the right balance between renunciation and action, engagement with renunciation. So therefore, Vedic karma would mean doing the duties which are prescribed. Now, prescribed by Veda. That can be very, very problematic for many people, including myself. So, because Vedas were written, we don't know, thousands of years ago. Smritis were written thousands of years ago. They have their own set of rules and regulations and prescriptions. How can they be relevant today? That question must bother all of us. Because times have changed, the way we look at the world have changed, the society has changed. So how can the same old rules, regulations be valid even today? And that's the question that is not just bothering us. And there are people who are willing to burn the Manusmriti. There are people who are to reject the entire tradition of Dharma Shastra. And Dharma Shastra, in the Dharma Shastra tradition itself, there have been moments, there have been scholars who have risen against the tradition.
Sorry, Manusmriti?
Yes. They have risen against the tradition and come out with alternative programs of action. So let us not be under the delusion that Dharma Shastra teaches some kind of fundamentalism, or Dharma Shastra teaches some kind of revivalism. It doesn't. Dharma Shastra is a very, very vibrant, Dharma Shastra is a very, very dynamic process of social evolution. That is what Dharma Shastra is, and this view you will get if you don't look at the Manusmriti in isolation, but look at how various ideas, various thoughts, various prescriptions, various institutions have evolved in the 4,000 or at least 2,000 years that we have a good evidence of. Good textual evidence, almost a continuous literary tradition of Dharma Shastra itself. So let me just say just a few things about what Dharma Shastra literary tradition consists of. We've mentioned Veda, we have mentioned up to the Smritis, but at the if we just go by what the historians say, let's accept it as it is. By around 7th century AD, all the important Smritis had already been written, but that does not mark the end of Dharma Shastra. In fact, a more livelier, dynamic, progressive Dharma Shastra tradition comes after the Smritis have been composed. Once we do not have texts which have divine authority, once we stop getting texts which are written by God, or which are the words of God, or which are the words of great rishis, what do? The society was changing, is changing even then, and was changing even then. So how do you handle newer situations in life? How do you handle newer problems in life? We thought in India, in the Dharma Shastra tradition, we worked out a very nice solution. We had a rich tradition of texts, right from the Rig Veda to so many large number of Smritis. The first thing that we tried to do was to write new commentaries on the Smritis. So commentaries form a very significant part of the Dharma Shastra literary tradition. Some of the important commentaries I can just mention. For example, if you look at Manusmriti, there are at least two very important, several Smritis, several commentaries. Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan itself has published a Manusmriti with 9 Sanskrit commentaries. But one which has a lot of content, lot of ideas, lot of conflict, and a lot of conflict resolution is a commentary by Medhatithi. He wrote it in somewhere about 8th century. Medhatithi, somewhere around 8th century. Again, time, date, place, I can't comment on. So Medhatithi's commentary is quite extensive. Then another very important commentary of the Manusmriti is somewhere around 12th century. Kulluk Bhatta. Kulluk Bhatta. But in my little study of Dharma Shastra, the most significant text, the most significant work on Dharma Shastra that I have encountered is Vijnaneshwar's commentary on the Yajnavalkya Smriti. Vijnaneshwar's commentary on the Yajnavalkya Smriti. We will spend a lot of time on Vijnaneshwar's, certain sections of Vijnaneshwar's commentary in the days to come.
How is that connected with Manusmriti?
They're all connected. We believe in the unity of all texts. No text is to be seen in isolation.
Ekavakyata.
Ekavakyata. So all texts are complementary. Don't see any contradictions. Wherever there are contradictions, we will come out with means and techniques to resolve those contradictions to maintain this theory of Ekavakyata. So there are other smritis and commentaries, but after the period of the commentaries, we have another very important type of Dharma Shastra texts. They are called Nibandhas. Nibandhas are of two kinds. One, simple anthologies. So they will take a certain topic and just list all the views expressed by leading smritikars on that particular topic without commenting on it, without even trying to show without trying to reconcile the differences, etc. They simply list out the views. So that's one kind of Nibandha text. But the second kind of Nibandha text that I have in mind are the speaking texts. Very, very speaking texts which will discuss the various views on a particular topic, show the contradictions, give good reasons to accept or reject one view or the other. So they are the speaking texts. They will prescribe very, very clear rules. An anthology won't give you any clarity about what exactly should I do in a particular situation. It simply lists out these are the options. But then giving me contradictory options is going to make me more confused. So this is what these speaking Nibandhas do. They resolve contradictions. They give you a view, a particular view, a very clear, specific view on different situations, on different problems. So these are the texts which we need to look at very carefully. And one of the texts which I have particularly seen is Smriti Chandrika, ascribed to Devanagari.
I have a question. So this Nibandhas, there are two views.
Two kinds.
There are two kinds.
One simple and
first is the compilation of.
Compilation.
Is it only a comprehensive view or something?
It's just listing different views. Manusmriti mein eka, Yajnavalkya mein eka, Narad mein, etc.
It's a compilation.
Just a compilation of verses.
And the second one is.
Second one is a speaking
discussion,
text.
or
Yes,
they're
yes.
creating the questions.
No, they're raising questions. They're discussing the various interpretations. They're discussing the problems which different views raise, and they also try to resolve those differences and come out with a final ruling as so as to
Are
say.
they called by different names?
No, they're just called Nibandhas. Nibandhas are kind of digests that we have in law now. So you will write something on taxation or some particular aspect of taxation or on constitution or some particular aspect of. So these are topic-wise arrangements of Smriti material with these kinds of discussions. Even the commentaries, I must mention, are very, very significant, particularly Yajnavalkya, this Vijnaneshwar and Medhatithi, because they are very speaking texts. If you look at Kulluk's commentary, for example, on Manusmriti, it barely says anything. It merely, just a moment, sir. It merely reproduces in a different language what Manusmriti says. Very rarely will it come out with something additional. But on the other hand, Medhatithi will again do the same thing. What a digest writer will do He will collect views, discuss their contradictions, try to resolve the contradictions, and come out with a specific view. The role of a commentator, I think we will talk about it later, is very important because he has a text already in his hand, which he has undertaken to explain. He is almost bound by that text. He does not have the freedom to go beyond the text. A Nibandhakar, for example, is not bound by a text. He is free to pick and choose from anywhere that he wants. But that freedom is not available to a commentator. So, but yet, some of these commentators have gone beyond the text and tried to make their text as contemporary as possible by incorporating various views and also, as I said, resolving the many contradictions, if any. So, right from the Smritis at least, the metrical Smritis, then the commentaries and the Nibandhas. This is a huge kind of voluminous literature that we have. I mean, Nibandhas could be again several hundreds. Smritis 200, I have already said. Commentaries several dozen. So it's a huge literature that we are looking at. And the best thing about Dharma Shastra then is, as a Shastra, if I may spend half a minute over the meaning of the word Shastra itself, you must have encountered it earlier. Shastra means that which prescribes. Shastra is something which prescribes. It is a prescriptive work. And when there is a prescription, when there is an injunction, when there is a law, when there is a rule, it has to be by nature clear, not confusing, free from all contradictions. Only then will people be able to follow it. There has to be absolute clarity, absolute certainty. So clarity and certainty and authority and validity, all these things will make a rule more followable, if I can use that expression.
Sir, you are saying that this 8th century Medhapati and 12th century Kullu Bhatt. So can we trace the problems which arise in 8th century to 12th century? When we see this Kullu Bhatt Tika, then we'll know about some more problems.
Kullu is not helpful because he doesn't say much.
Okay. So is he repeating some?
More of kind of just rephrasing what Manusmriti has. So if you want to look at if you want to trace the problems, the evolution of problems
8th century
from 8th century to 12th century, you will have to look at Vijnaneshwar and not Kullu.
Question is,
Yes, sir.
there are several Smritis,
Yes.
and based on those Smritis, Nibandha, and then there are two discourses to really discuss the conflicts and resolve it. So these three components are there. The question is, Smritis, there are so many Smritis are there. Vedas, of course, there is sort of categorization. This pertains to this kind of arguments also. But Smritis, like Yakivalika Smritis, Lucy Smritis, and so on, they must be concerning certain topics or areas.
Yes, that is what we are going to discuss. That is what we are going to discuss in detail, and that is what I have given to you in this little one on the first page. A little, just a rough idea of what Smritis discuss, what Smritis talk about. Though this is just the content of the Manusmriti, but that is quite the much what other Smritis will also have.
But why? Once they are similar,
They're not similar. They're not similar. They're so different. And that is why this constant struggle to find what is the right view, the constant problem, the constant confusion that look, Manu says X, Yagyavak says Y, what shall I do? That is the job of the commentator, that is the job of the digest writer, and that is what they have been doing. and we will talk about it in detail on some other day. In brief, I can simply say that the best thing about the Dharma Shastra literature is, as I said, Shastra. So there has to be clarity, there has to be absolute certainty, things should be said with absolute authority, people should be willing to accept the authority of the person who is making that claim or laying down that injunction. So all these factors go into making of Dharma Shastra literature. And we will talk about the authority, the problem of authority in Smritis at some point of time. At the moment, let me go back to the Shastra thing. So, if it is a Shastra, it has to be authoritative, clear, certain, and that is what all these commentators and all these digest writers try to make it. That is why you need a Dharma Shastra. You need a whole science of interpretation, a whole science which will look at all these problems and organize things. Because when things are loosely available in the society, they're not a science. They're not science yet. What makes loose views, opinions into a science is this organization, and that is the role of Dharma Shastra. There are so many views, so many ideas, so many rules. There's such a hodgepodge, such an anarchy of ideas. How do you create a civilized system out of that anarchy of rules? That is the role of Dharma Shastra. So, I was talking about how Dharma Shastra then tries to weave a proper, well-arranged system of rules, regulations, which can then be followed, applied, enforced. Let me also say that along with that idea of harmonizing engagement with renunciation, the two other ideas which are very significant in the whole process in which Dharma Shastra works itself out. I'll draw your attention to page 3, point number 3. It talks of the fourfold objectives of life. Purushartha Chatushtaya. The whole system of Dharma Shastra is woven around this idea of four Purusharthas. Artha means objectives in life. What do we want in life? The four things they have worked out. One is, two things we know already. Everybody wants wealth, everybody wants power. That is Artha. Everybody wants a good life. Once you've acquired power, once you've acquired money, then what do? You buy an AC, buy another one, a better one, buy a phone which costs 1 lakh or 2 lakhs and a better one. That is all calm. You want to have a big car, you want to have a big house. That's all part of karma. Painting, music, dance, all these arts, they also form a part of karma. So, we all know that we want money, we all know we want power, and with that we want to have a very good life. Perfectly good, perfectly alright. Because Dharma Shastra does not bar you from acquiring wealth, Dharma Shastra does not bar you from enjoying your life. Because that is what Dharma Shastra is about, creating a right balance between your own interest and the interest of the society as a whole. So, Artha and Kam are very well known. Moksha, most Indians already know. So, everybody wants, ultimately, the purpose is to obtain release from the cycle of life and death. Because while we might disagree with Buddha that the whole world is a kind of a cause of misery, sarvam dukkham, but ultimately all Indian philosophy starts with the idea of release from dukkha, and life itself is the dukkha. And so that's the final end according to some schools of Indian philosophy. But then, as I said, Buddha would prescribe the path of renunciation for moksha. Shankaracharya will prescribe the path of renunciation for moksha. But all other schools of Indian philosophy, particularly if you are looking at a Dharma Shastra will allow you to reach the state of moksha by active engagement in life, through active engagement in life. So moksha also becomes a part of the Dharma Shastra. The first one is a little problematic. Dharma. When I say dharma as a purushartha, this I think needs a little clarification, because I just translated the word dharma as duty. That's not the meaning here. Dharma here is a very specific idea that we have taken from Mimamsa tradition. The Mimamsa philosophy, the Mimamsa tradition believed in rituals, and through the performance of various rituals, one could acquire both worldly pleasures as well as pleasures in the other world, that is heaven. For Mimamsa, the highest ideal was heaven, not moksha. But they thought that you could, for example, if there is no rain, you perform a certain ritual that there is rain. If you want good agricultural produce, you perform a certain ritual, you get a good produce. And we are replicating that in so many different ways. We may not be doing Vedic rituals now, but we are doing Puranic rituals. We are doing the rituals prescribed by our local Panditjis. We are still doing it. But how does this ritual fetch you anything? What is the connection between a ritual done here and now and its result? It may not come immediately. It's not that the moment you pour the last ahuti that it will start raining. That doesn't happen. And in any case, we have this idea of the whole theory of karma, that whatever you do will yield its result, whether now or at some other point of time. So the link between action and result is dharma. It has some other names. People call it adrishta, because it is unseen. We don't know. The causality between action and result cannot be established. It is unseen. It is unknown. It is invisible to us. So we call it adrishta. This is what we call dharma here. So when you perform a ritual, adrishta is produced, and that adrishta ultimately leads to the result, whether this worldly result in terms of children or wealth or cows or horses or whatever, or in terms of your certain number of days fixed in the heaven. So this is adrishta. So taking this cue from Mimamsa, Dharma Shastra has incorporated this idea. Since it has been a land of believers, our country has been a land of believers, of people who really believed and still believe that rituals can fetch some of these results. So Dharma Shastra allows you to take it as one of the important objectives, purposes of life. But how do you do it? How do you do it? Not simply by doing the Vedic ritual, not simply by doing some yajna and yaga, but Dharma Shastra has done a wonderful thing which I would like you to appreciate. They have extended the idea of dharma to our daily routine activities. Ritual does not end with doing a yaga, but it extends to me teaching you here and you sitting and studying here. So all normal life activities, whether personal or professional have been brought into the ambit of dharma, into the ambit of ritual, if I can use the word. So earlier definitions of dharma in some of the earlier texts would be yaga adireva dharma. For example, Mimamsa will say that only yaga is dharma, and there are all kinds of yagas, all kinds of sacrifices and rituals. But Dharma Shastra has extended that idea to include every little thing that we do in life, and that whatever little insignificant actions we might be doing, very simple things that we might be doing, will yield a adrishta, and which will lead to this worldly or otherworldly results. So this is a very significant aspect of Dharma Shastra, that it has converted ordinary activities of our lives into rituals. It has raised them to the level of rituals, and it has convinced us, it has tried to convince us that whether you are, whatever your profession, whatever your social calling, whatever your relationship with vis-a-vis others, whether you are conducting yourself as a mother, father, brother, son, or as a neighbor, or as a fellow traveler on the road, everything that you do, if you throw garbage on the road, some negative adrishta is generated. If you pick it up, positive adrishta is generated. So it's not important. We don't rule out ritual, we don't rule out yagya, but they've converted little simple things of life to that. They've raised simple things of life to the status of a ritual. I would like to recall two stories which all of you must have heard. One very important story is of that woman, a pativrata. Some people don't like that expression, but doesn't matter. I'm just using it because it has been traditionally used. So a great sannyasi, a great sadhu, sitting in the forest, does a very difficult penance and acquires a great power that he can burn anybody. If he looks at anybody with anger, the person gets burned. So you know the story. And when he goes around, the woman who's doing some household chores cannot attend to him. When she comes out, he gazes at her with some anger. She says, "I'm not a bird that you can burn me down." What does that mean? It's a very, very significant story from the point of view of Dharma Shastra. It shows that the little things that insignificant, which people don't attach any significance to. People think they're insignificant. We still don't attach any importance to the work of women working at home. Housewives. We don't attach any significance. But look at the kind of importance which Dharma Shastra gives to her work. The other story, even worse, if I would say, in single commas, is the story of the Dharma Vyadha. The man who's killing animals, one who's selling meat to make a living, is approached by a great sadhu who says, "Hame dharma ka upadesh dijiye." What more do we expect from Dharma Shastra? That's why I say Dharma Shastra has raised very, very simple, ordinary actions of life to a divine status, and allowed us to participate in life with a divine purpose. That's a very significant part of Dharma Shastra. So therefore, all the fourfold objectives, we are very happy if you earn money. I mean, Madam Dr. Shashi Prabha Kumar is here. She is an expert on Veda, but one line from the Veda that my teacher used to say very often in the class: 2 hands. Why are you earning with 2 hands? Earn with 100 hands. Shatahasta samahara. But that will come later. I'm only talking about the first part. Earn with 100 hands. We have no problem. Earn as much as you can. Live as well as you can. Have the biggest car in the world. Have the biggest house in the world. No problem as far as Dharma Shastra is concerned, so long as you have balanced your life properly and earned your money through valid, legal, moral means, and you are enjoying your life according to the rules and regulations prescribed by the Shastra, by the Dharma Shastra.
किसी को कुछ पूछना है तो पूछ लीजिए, ये लोग इतने आदी नहीं है ना, थोड़ा सा 5 मिनट इंटरेक्शन कर लो। तुम्हें भी थोड़ा रिलीफ मिलता है। मंजू जी, आप पूछना लायो पेज? हाँ जी।
पानी मुझे
source of all Dharma Shastras.
So we are coming to it. That's the next part of the discussion. Source of dharma.
So, sir, ये सामान्य रूप से वैदिक कर्म में प्रवृत्ति मार्ग से होता जाता है।
हाँ
ये आपने
आने के लिए कुछ आ रहा है।
ये निवृत्ति मार्ग से छोड़ दिया, उसके बाद तो मैं वैदिक कर्म योग पर आ गया, प्रवृत्ति मार्ग पर आ चुका हूँ।
ये प्रवृत्ति मार्ग है।
प्रवृत्ति मार्ग का और कई शब्द हैं।
और सर
उपनिषद में जैसे आया विद्या और अविद्या का समन्वय करना। ओके
सर्दियों वाला नहीं है,
संहिता
गर्मियों वाला
है, मंत्रभाग है, उनके इंटरप्रिटेशन के लिए जैसे वाक्य शास्त्र में जैसे धर्मशास्त्र मीमांसा, ऐसे ही स्मृति ग्रंथों
वो वही उसी को यूज कर रहे हैं, सारे मीमांसा को ही हम यूज करेंगे।
जिसको मैथमेटिक्स
पूरा वही मीमांसा मीमांसा के ही जो वेद की व्याख्या के सिद्धांत थे उनको ही एज इट इज स्मृतियों पर अप्लाई किया। सारे टीकाकार कमेंटेटर यही करते हैं। ये जो हमारे वो दीप्ति का पीएचडी थीसिस है वो इसी पर है। एप्लीकेशन ऑफ मीमांसा प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑन स्मृति एंड
जो
धर्म,
डाल दी वो दे देती हूँ तो ठंडा हो जाएगा।
वो सेम वही चीजें ले लेते हैं।
So धर्मशास्त्र writes across all the 6 हमारे जो दर्शन हैं।
Yes sir, that is another point. धर्मशास्त्र begins where all darshanas end.
षड दर्शन के बाद
But this is my understanding and my interpretation. You may be a Nayaik, you may be a Vaisheshik, you may be a Charvak or anything. Ultimately, whatever your ontological, epistemological presuppositions, करोगे भी तो कुछ दुनिया में क्या करोगे वो जो हम बताएंगे वो।
धर्मशास्त्र प्रवृत्ति मार्ग के लिए है।
हाँ, धर्मशास्त्र प्रवृत्ति मार्ग
षड दर्शन निवृत्ति भी है।
नहीं, जरूरी नहीं है। षड दर्शन तक कुछ है जो ये भी अल्टीमेटली निवृत्ति की ओर लेके जाएगा, निश्रेयस की ओर ये भी लेके जाएगा, बट थ्रू दिस टू अ डिफरेंट पाथ, थ्रू द पाथ ऑफ एंगेजमेंट। You can short circuit it. If you have the courage, if you have the strength, you can become a sannyasi straight away. So from brahmacharya, you go straight into sannyas. But as I said, it's not a good idea. Not possible for everybody.
तो सर ये धर्मशास्त्र कहते किसे हैं? वेद को धर्मशास्त्र कहते हैं या मीमांसा को कहते हैं?
इन दोनों में से किसी को नहीं कहते। धर्म की व्याख्या करके धर्म के इन सब वेदों, स्मृतियों, निबंधों, व्याख्याओं, कमेंट्रीज, इन सब की नो थैंक्स उन सब की व्याख्या करके समुचित नियमों के निर्धारण करने वाले शास्त्र का नाम धर्मशास्त्र है।
But sir,
जैसे तुम्हारे व्याकरण में शब्दों के विभाग कर करके उसके स्वरूप को समझाकर सही शब्द क्या है, गलत शब्द क्या है, इसका निविधान करने वाला शास्त्र व्याकरण है। ऐसे ही धर्मशास्त्र में सारे ग्रंथों के वाक्यों को लेकर उन पे विचार मंथन करके एक सही किम कर्म किम अकर्मेति ये निर्धारण करने वाला, डूज एंड डोंट्स प्रिस्क्राइब करने वाला शास्त्र है धर्मशास्त्र।
but sir, again the problem is that who is saying, who is giving us the command? Only the individuals are giving, or
We will talk about this in detail. That is the most important part that we have to discuss now. ये अथॉरिटी क्या है?
मीमांसा धर्मशास्त्र का ग्रामर है क्या?
मीमांसा धर्मशास्त्र का ग्रामर है। बिना मीमांसा के धर्मशास्त्र की आप एक पंक्ति की व्याख्या नहीं कर सकते।
मीमांसा धर्मशास्त्र नहीं है।
मीमांसा को धर्मशास्त्र में ले लिया है, सादर सश्रद्ध भाव से उनका प्रयोग हम कर रहे हैं। इसके बिना हमारा चलेगा ही।
जैसे सर उपनिषद वेदांत है, ब्रह्म सूत्र भी वेदांत है, व्याकरण है एक तरह से वेदांत है ना सर? जो वेदांत की व्याख्या करने वाला है, सेंटेंस इंटरप्रिटेशन है ना, वो भी उसी नाम से जाना जाता है।
वो भी तो मीमांसा के प्रिंसिपल्स पे लेके चलेंगे। जब उन्हें उपनिषद की व्याख्या करके दिखाना है, ब्रह्म सत्यम जगत मिथ्या, केवल परब्रह्म की सत्ता है, वो इतने सारे परस्पर विरोधी जो वाक्य हैं उनकी व्याख्या कैसे करें? वो उसी प्रिंसिपल्स में आ रहा है। उनको प्रिंसिपल्स का इतना यूज नहीं करना पड़ा क्योंकि वो सब चीजें श्रुति वाक्य के आधार पर सिद्ध कर लेते हैं। यहाँ पर श्रुति वाक्य नहीं चलता, क्यों नहीं चलता वो भी देखेंगे।
सर ये जो निबंध की दूसरा वाला पोर्शन है उसमें क्या उसी तरह का ट्रेडिशन है, पूर्व पक्ष और उत्तर पक्ष है ना?
पूर्व पक्ष उत्तर पक्ष भी हो सकता है, लेकिन जितना दर्शन में उतना नहीं है। कई जगह है, बहुत जगह है,
मतलब वो डिस्कशन उतना लॉजिकल डिस्कशन कोई
कभी करेंगे।
हम सब लेंगे।
तब तो जरूर लेना चाहिए।
हमारे लिए थोड़ा सा रिफिल हो सकता है।
जी जी जरूर।
आपने की सर आपने
ये हमारे कोर्स के अंदर प्रोग्राम
बहुत अच्छे।
निबंध ट्रेडिशन है वो अभी तक मतलब
अब नहीं है, अंग्रेजों ने लास्ट निबंध लिखवा के चले गए। When they came to Calcutta, they thought कि अब हम क्या करें? What rules shall we follow? So for Hindus, they thought they needed a text. Initially, they asked all the pandits there. Somebody said this is Manusmriti, somebody said this is. They found they were full of contradictions. So विवाद आरणव भंग. So
कॉन्ट्रडिक्शंस क्रिएट की है,
contradictions हैं, अभी हमने
गलत है?
ज्यादा किया है।
नहीं है।
संतरा
और ऐसे आप lawyers तो
गर्म ही है।
lawyers are famous and
अपने ग्लास में डाल
notorious for
लीजिए।
creating problems.
ग्लास में दीजिए। हाँ जी।
And धर्मशास्त्र has to and वो धर्मशास्त्र has to then handle the lawyers.
गांधी जी तो इनसे राज में कहते हैं ये सभ्यता के सबसे बड़े दुश्मन।
थैंक यू सो मच।
In fact, मैं बताऊंगा अभी
तो ये एक जो लॉयर्स कह रहे हैं ना, ये लॉयर्स वेस्टर्न
हमारे
कह
है
रहे
कि
हैं,
नहीं, हमारे भी है।
हमारे कॉन्सेप्ट पे ऐसा
पेड
बात होते
प्रोफेशनल नहीं है।
ऐसे lawyers हमारे पास
पेड प्रोफेशनल लॉयर नहीं है। We don't know whether he's a paid lawyer, but